What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. So with the release of Spider-Man Far From Home just a few months away, I thought I would go back and review all the other Spider-Man movies that I haven't talked about yet. I'm going to be talking about the original 3 Spider-Man movies, the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and when Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse comes out, I'll be talking about that one on Blu-ray after it comes out, because I still haven't seen it in theaters, and I'm probably not going to be able to see it in theaters, so I'll do that one when it comes out on Blu-ray. I've already talked about Spider-Man Homecoming, and my thoughts on the movie haven't changed since then, so if you want to know my opinion on that, go ahead and check out my original video. And we're starting with one of my favorite childhood movies of all time, Spider-Man. I still vividly remember seeing Spider-Man in theaters. It was with my aunt and my sister. My parents didn't go for some reason, I don't know why. But we were being babysat and my parents were like, just take them to go see a movie. And we went to go see Spider-Man, and I still remember seeing images on the big screen. I was about 7 years old when it came out, and I still remember it. And I was blown away with this movie. And something I wanted to do when I rewatched this movie was not just watch it as, oh my gosh, it's a Spider-Man movie. I love Spider-Man, I love this movie. I just wanted to watch this movie as kind of like with fresh eyes. Like I'm watching it for the first time as a film, not just a childhood movie that I have nostalgic feelings over. I wanted to watch this just as a movie, like again, like I'm watching it for the first time. And I still love this movie. There's a few flaws I have with the movie, watching it all these years later, but overall, I still love this movie so much. This movie was honestly my first real interaction with the Spider-Man character. I didn't read the comic books. I've read a few of the comic books over the years after I saw the movie, but this was my first introduction to Spider-Man. So I kind of always thought organic web shooters were his thing. I didn't know he built his own web shooters. I didn't know when I first saw this movie that the Green Goblin was supposed to be an actual goblin. When I saw this movie, I thought that's how it was in the comic books. Later on, I realized that when you adapt something, whether it's a comic book or anything, creative changes have to be made in order for the movie to make sense. And it made sense with this movie because this movie wasn't trying to be a comic book movie in a sense. It tried to be a more grounded in reality comic book movie while still being a comic book type movie, if that makes sense. Also, at this stage, comic book movies weren't really seen like they are nowadays. People always thought comic book movies as, kids things. A comic book movie being for both kids and adults, that was kind of unheard of. We saw that with the Superman movies, we saw that with the Batman movies, but those ended up turning into childish movies later on in their time. This was one of the first serious comic book movies. X-Men was also one too, but this is the first one that I saw, was Spider-Man. And right off the bat, the casting in this movie was absolutely perfect. Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, he's still likable even all these years later. I liked him then, and I still like him now. Now, I mentioned in my Homecoming review that he was kind of lacking in Spider-Man, meaning he didn't have all those quips and funny jokes that he would throw in there every now and then, but he's a phenomenal Peter Parker. He makes up for the few quips that he has in the movie with being a really on point, almost perfect Peter Parker. And you still feel for this guy all these years later. Like I said, I felt for him then, I still feel for him now. The casting for him, it paid off. It was really great. There was at one point where Tom Cruise and Leonardo DiCaprio were being picked for Spider-Man. That would have been interesting to see one of them two, but I think the best choice was Tobey Maguire. Kirsten Dunst is the reason why I still have celebrity crushes nowadays. The 7-year-old me really liked Kirsten Dunst, and I still really like Kirsten Dunst now. All that being said, she is pretty good in the movie. Everyone always says, oh, she's a damsel in distress. Well, isn't that how she is in the comic books? This was before, female comic book movies were a thing, where everyone's pushing to make a lead female comic book movie, or a lead female hero. And from what I know of Mary Jane Watson from the comics, Kirsten Dunst does a really good job. Basically, everyone's great. James Franco, Cliff Robertson, Rosemary Harris, I believe that's her name. I didn't watch the credits. They're all fantastic in this movie, but the standout, besides Tobey Maguire for me, is Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. Oh my God. Such a great villain, and I love Willem Dafoe as his character. Everyone always says, you know, he looks like a Power Ranger. I've heard so many complaints about him over the years. I don't care about those complaints, because he created for me one of the best villains I've ever seen in a movie. 7-year-old me loved him, and I still love him now. I even heard Willem Dafoe was willing to take a pay cut just to play this character. Like, he had such a passion to play the Green Goblin, and it shows in his performance. I don't care if he looks like a Power Ranger. I don't care that he's not a real goblin, you know, how he is in the comic books. What matters to me is the performance, and the performance is on point. The story is basically an origin story. You know, Peter Parker, he's an outcast in high school. He gets bitten by a radioactive spider at a school field trip. He starts noticing all these things about him, like he can climb walls, he can shoot webs. We deal with the Uncle Ben thing, which I think this was the first time we saw this on screen. You know, with the great power comes great responsibility, and the whole death of Uncle Ben, which, by the way, that death is really sad. It made me cry when I saw it in the theaters, and it's still sad to this day. Cliff Robertson, amazing as Uncle Ben. My only real issues with the movie are, unfortunately, the effects. Now, honestly, that's something that's not the film's fault. You know, the effects for the time, I remember being outstanding. I was so blown away with it. Although a part of me did question it at the time when I first saw it, because it's hard to explain without actually showing you, but I'll still do my best. For instance, the scene of Peter running through, he's jumping on top of the buildings. I've always wondered why his movement is a little weird. I always wondered that when I was a kid. Nowadays, I realize it's computer effects, and they're dated. But again, that's not the film's fault. For their time, they were outstanding. Nowadays, they're dated. They get better in the second movie, and I'll get into that when I get to the second movie. But for this movie, they're unfortunately very noticeable and take me out of the movie. Back then they didn't, but now they do. It's kind of weird how time works like that. Also, there's a few scenes with the Green Goblin, and even with Peter too, that remind you this is based on a comic book. You know, some of the times, some scenes that go on do feel a bit over the top, especially with the Goblin and how his split personalities work out like that. Some of it does get a bit over the top, and it does remind you that this is a comic book movie. But that doesn't really take me out of the movie. It is something I should worth noting all these years later watching, but that's really it. You know, the action stuff's great, the character moments are great. Everything else I absolutely love about this movie. Those are my two only real flaws in the movie, and the first one you can't really fault the movie for. It's time's fault, really. Besides that, I still love this movie to this day. It's still one of my favorite comic book movies. Spider-Man the 2002 movie is a definite Blu-ray pickup, and I would know that because I have 2 Blu-rays of this movie. I've got the Digibook collection pack and then the singular Blu-ray, and right over here I got the DVD that I've had since I was a kid. So trying out my new rating system, I would definitely give this one a definite Blu-ray purchase. So what are your guys' thoughts on the original Spider-Man and the franchise as a whole? I'm really interested to hear your guys' opinions on it. I know a lot of people love this movie, but I have heard a lot of people don't like this movie because of how some stuff is inaccurate to the comic books. Like I said, I can get over that. But whatever your thoughts on it all, let me know in the comment section. And my next Spider-Man review is going to be for Spider-Man 2. Probably going to be a while before that one comes out, but don't worry, I'm still going to do it. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Look forward to a lot more reviews coming soon. I've got a lot planned out. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, click right here. And I'll see you guys next time.